The station's observation deck stretched out before Jiwon like a crystal cathedral, its transparent walls revealing the endless dance of stars beyond. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching a transport vessel drift past, its engines leaving trails of blue light in the darkness. 3 days. 3 days of careful words and cautious smiles, and finally the treaty was signed. Earth would have access to Velkari trade routes. Humanity would take another step toward being accepted in this vast galaxy. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said beside him, "Dachi." One turned to find Lyrae standing closer than most Velkari ever stood to humans. She wore the silver robes of her people, and her eyes held that strange luminescence that marked her species. They could read thoughts, these Velkari. Not deeply, they claimed, not without permission. Just surface feelings, like reading the weather on someone's face. It never gets old, Jiwon admitted. He had been assigned to protect Ambassador Hyungwoo during these negotiations, but protection meant more than watching for physical threats. It meant understanding the people around them, their intentions, their hidden meanings. Lyrae had made that task easier. Unlike the other Velkari delegates who treated humans like interesting insects, she asked questions. Real questions. She wanted to know about Korean food, about the reunification, about why humans still wrote poetry when they had computers to do it better. Yesterday, she had laughed at one of his jokes. The Velkari didn't laugh often. "Your ambassador did well today," she said, gazing out at the stars. "Many of my people doubted humans could understand the complexity of interstellar commerce law." "We surprise people," Jiwon replied. There was an edge to his voice he hadn't intended. She looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "I meant no offense." "My people? We've existed in space for 12,000 years. It's easy to forget that time doesn't equal wisdom." They stood in silence for a moment. A comfortable silence, which was rare between species who had nearly gone to war 5 years ago over a misunderstanding about mining rights. "I wanted to thank you," Lyrae continued. "These 3 days, you've helped me understand humans better. Most of your kind are guarded around us, afraid we'll pluck their secrets from their minds. Can you blame them?" "No," she said softly. "But it's lonely, being feared for something you can barely control." Jiwon studied her profile. The Velkari were considered beautiful by most species standards. Elegant, symmetrical, with movements that seemed choreographed even when spontaneous. But there was something else in Lyrae, something that seemed almost human. A sadness, maybe. Or a searching. "The delegation leaves tomorrow," she said, changing the subject. "Back to our respective worlds. I'll miss these conversations. So will I." She turned to face him fully. "Humans have many goodbye customs, don't they? I've been studying them. Handshakes, waves, even embraces between friends." Jiwon felt something shift in the air between them, though he couldn't name what it was. "We do. Would you teach me? The proper way to say goodbye to a human friend?" There was something vulnerable in the request, something that touched a part of Jiwon that professional distance usually kept locked away. His sister Myrae used to say he was too trusting, too willing to see the best in people. But Myrae had died in the colony wars, and maybe that was why Jiwon still tried to build bridges instead of walls. "A hug," he said. "Between friends, we embrace. Show me?" He stepped closer, suddenly aware of how small the gesture seemed in this vast station floating in the void. "Like this," he said, and carefully put his arms around her butt. She was warm. Warmer than he expected. The Velkari were supposed to run cold, their biology adapted to their ice moon homeworld. But Lyrae felt almost feverish against him, and she held on perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she whispered near his ear, "for seeing me as a person, not just a Velkari." When they separated, she smiled. It looked genuine. Would you come to my quarters? Just for a moment. I have something I'd like to give you. A gift, human custom, yes? Ji-Wan hesitated. Protocol said he should decline, should maintain professional boundaries. But Protocol also said to build goodwill, to strengthen the fragile connections between their peoples. And after 3 days of genuine connection, refusing felt like an insult. For a moment, he agreed. Her quarters were smaller than he expected, decorated with the minimalist aesthetic the Valkyrie preferred. Geometric patterns on the walls, furniture that seemed to grow from the floor itself. She gestured for him to enter, and he stepped inside, got the door closed behind him. Not unusual. Privacy was important to the Valkyrie. But then he heard it. A soft click. The kind of sound a lock makes when it engages. He turned slowly. Lyrae stood with her back to the door, and her expression had changed. The warmth had drained from her face, replaced by something cold and professional. Her eyes no longer held that searching quality. They were focused, predatory. "I'm sorry, Ji-Wan," she said, and he noticed she no longer used his rank. "I genuinely am." His hand moved toward his communicator, but she raised her palm. A pulse of energy rippled through the air, and suddenly his muscles locked. Not completely paralyzed, but moving felt like pushing through concrete. A neural dampening field. Military grade. The hug was necessary, she continued, her voice steady and calm. Humans have strong mental defenses. Paranoid species often do. But those defenses lower with trust, with physical contact, with the belief that you're safe. Ji-Wan fought against the field, managed to stay standing when he should have collapsed. Sweat broke out on his forehead. "What? Are you?" "Deep intelligence operative, Valkyrie High Command," she said, stepping closer. The treaty was real, but it was also cover. We needed time, access, proximity to someone like you. Like me? Psionic Countermeasure Division, she said. Yes, we know about it. You're trained to resist telepathic intrusion. But training only goes so far against someone who's spent 3 days mapping your mind, learning your patterns, earning your trust. She placed her hand against his temple. Her palm was burning hot now, and he realized the fever wasn't biological. It was psychic energy building for this moment. "I'll take what I need," she said quietly. "The FTL inhibitor technology. Your government won't share it, but your mind will. And then I'll leave you here with no memory of anything but a friendly goodbye." Her consciousness slammed into his like a tidal wave. Ji-Wan's mind exploded with light and pain. He had trained for this, spent months in simulation chambers, learning to defend against telepathic intrusion. But simulation was nothing like the real thing. Lyrae's consciousness wasn't gentle or tentative. It was a surgical tool, precise and merciless, cutting through the outer layers of his thoughts like a knife through paper. He felt her rifling through his recent memories. The treaty signing, his conversations with Ambassador Hyun-woo, security protocols. She was looking for something specific, and she knew exactly where to dig, but something was wrong. He could feel her confusion, even as she pressed deeper. His mind wasn't organizing itself the way she expected. Valkyrie minds were elegant structures, she had once told him, like crystal palaces where every thought had its proper place. She expected human minds to be similar, just more primitive, easier to navigate. Instead, she found chaos. Memories didn't line up chronologically. Emotions bled into unrelated thoughts. He was thinking about breakfast while simultaneously running through combat protocols, while also remembering his sister's funeral, while hearing a song that had been stuck in his head for 3 days. It was all happening at once, layered and tangled, and he could feel Lyrae's frustration building. "Stop resisting," she commanded, her physical voice mixing with her mental one. "You're only making this harder." But Jiwan wasn't resisting. Not intentionally. This was just how human minds worked, and his training had taught him to make it worse. He grabbed onto every random thought that floated through his consciousness and amplified it. The song became louder. The memory of his sister's smile became brighter. The taste of the terrible station coffee he'd had that morning became overwhelming. Lyrae pushed harder, and Jiwan felt something inside him tear. The pain was incredible, like his skull was splitting open. He fell to one knee, the neural dampening field flickering as she diverted more energy to the mental assault. That was his chance. Military training kicked in through the noise and confusion. His hand shot out and grabbed her ankle, breaking her balance. She stumbled, and the telepathic connection wavered for just a moment, but only a moment. She caught herself and reinforced the link, pouring more of herself into his mind. And that's when things became truly dangerous for both of them, because the connection went both ways. Jiwan suddenly saw through her eyes, felt her feelings. She was terrified. Beneath the professional coldness, beneath the operative's mask, she was absolutely terrified of him. Not because he was physically threatening, because his mind was infecting hers. Human emotions were too loud, too intense, too raw. Valkyries spent their lives learning to moderate their feelings, to think collectively, to value logic over passion. But humans evolved differently. They survived by feeling everything at maximum volume, by making split-second emotional decisions that logic said were stupid, but instinct said were necessary. And now those emotions were flooding into Lyrae's consciousness. She felt his fear, his anger at being betrayed, his grief over his sister that he carried every day like a stone in his chest. But worse than that, she felt his confusion and hurt that she specifically had betrayed him, because he had liked her, genuinely liked her. In 3 days, she had become someone he thought might be a friend, and that loss hurt almost as much as the invasion of his mind. "Get out," she gasped. But it wasn't clear if she was talking to him or to herself. She tried to pull back, but discovered something horrifying. She couldn't. The connection had gone too deep, and human minds didn't let go easily. They held on to things, hoarded memories and feelings and attachments like treasures. Her consciousness was stuck in his, tangled in the messy web of his thoughts, and the harder she pulled, the more entangled they became. Jiwan realized it at the same moment. They were trapped together. The neural dampening field flickered and died as Lyrae lost concentration. He could move again, but it didn't matter. He was locked in his own kind of paralysis, his mind bound to hers in a connection neither of them had intended or wanted. He could feel her panic matching his own, could sense her scrambling through her training, looking for a way to break free. "Stop," he managed to say out loud. "Stop struggling. You're making it worse." "How do you know?" Her physical voice sounded strained, frightened. So different from the cold operative who had trapped him minutes ago. "Because I can feel what you're feeling," he said. "And your fear is feeding mine, which feeds yours. It's a loop." She looked at him with wide eyes, and he saw himself through her perception. Dangerous, unpredictable, a chaos creature whose mind was poison to her ordered existence. But underneath that, he also felt something else. Guilt, real, genuine guilt about what she was doing. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "Any of this." Through the connection, Jiwan caught flashes of memory. A face he didn't recognize. A name, Theron. Love and loss so profound it made his own grief look small. And underneath it all, rage. Cold, burning rage at humans, at humanity, at everything Earth represented. "You lost someone," he said quietly. She flinched, tried to hide the memory, but it was too late. He saw it all now. A border station. Weapons fire. Bodies floating in the void. And Theron among them, his elegant Valkyrie features frozen in death. Human weapons. Human ships. A skirmish that Earth's official records claimed never happened. We were going to be bonded, Lyrae said, and there were tears on her face now. Real tears, which was shocking because he'd never seen a Valkyrie cry. He was assigned to a research outpost on the border. Your military said it was an accident. A navigation error. But 16 people died in that accident, and your government pretended it never occurred. Ji-won felt his anger draining away, replaced by something more complicated. Through the connection, he could feel that her grief was real. Her loss was real. But he could also feel something else, something she hadn't noticed yet herself. The memory of that attack, the details of it, felt wrong. Hollow. Like a recording played too many times, losing clarity with each replay. Look closer, he said. At the memory. Something's not right about it. Don't tell me about my own memories, she snapped, but he felt her attention turn inward, and then they both saw it. The edges of the memory were too sharp, too perfect. Real memories had fuzzy borders, uncertain details. This one played like a video file, exact and unchanging. It wasn't organic. It was implanted. Lyrae's horror was absolute. No, that's not possible. That's my memory. I remember the day they told me. I remember the funeral ceremonies. I remember everything. But as they examined it together, they found more inconsistencies. Timestamps that didn't match. Details that contradicted each other. And underneath it all, buried deep in her subconscious, a crystalline structure that didn't belong. Neural conditioning. Advanced, sophisticated, hidden behind layers of her natural consciousness. They did this to you, Ji-won said, and he felt sick. Your own people. They altered your memories to make you hate us. Why? But even as she asked, she was finding more. More implanted memories, more conditioning, all designed to turn her grief into a weapon pointed at humanity. Through the connection, they found the answer together. The Valkyrie High Command needed operatives with motivation, with personal stakes. Grief-driven agents were loyal, focused, willing to do anything for revenge. So they created them. They took volunteers like Lyrae and rewrote their pain, aimed it where they wanted it to go. And the treaty itself was part of the plan. Get close to humans, earn their trust, steal their technology, and give the High Command exactly what they needed to justify the next war. The floor felt cold against Ji-won's knees. He had collapsed without realizing it, too overwhelmed by the flood of shared consciousness. Lyrae sat across from him, her back against the door, her silver robes disheveled. Her face was wet with tears that kept flowing despite her obvious attempts to stop them. I killed for them, she whispered. Her voice was raw, broken. 3 missions before this one. I killed humans because I believed they murdered Theron. Because I thought I was avenging him. But none of it was real. Through the connection, Ji-won felt every death she carried. A merchant captain who knew too much. A researcher who discovered something he shouldn't have. A security officer who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 lives ended by her hands, all built on a foundation of manufactured grief. They used you, Ji-won said. His anger had transformed into something colder, more dangerous. They took your real pain and twisted it into a tool. Was there even a real Theron? Lyrae asked. Or did they fabricate him entirely? They searched through her memories together and found fragments of truth buried beneath the lies. Yes, there had been a Theron. Yes, he had died. But it was illness, not violence. A genetic condition that struck suddenly. No one's fault. She had grieved him naturally, properly. And then the High Command had noticed her grief and seen opportunity. I volunteered, she said bitterly. They asked for operatives willing to serve in deep intelligence, and I said yes, because I was broken and wanted purpose. I gave them permission to make me into this. Permission they abused, Ji-won countered. You didn't consent to being reprogrammed. He felt her examining the conditioning more closely now, tracing the crystalline pathways that had been embedded in her neural structure. They were beautiful in their complexity, terrible in their purpose. Every pathway designed to trigger specific responses, to suppress doubt, to maintain absolute loyalty to the mission. There's a failsafe, Lyrae said suddenly, her voice tight with fear. I can feel it now. If I deviate from mission parameters, if I refuse to extract the information I was sent for, the conditioning will activate a final protocol. What kind of protocol? She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. Neural cascade. My brain will essentially burn itself out from the inside. I'll be dead in seconds, and all evidence of the conditioning will be destroyed with me. Can we disable it? Not from inside. It would take specialized equipment, Velkari neurologists, time we don't have. And even if we could, she paused, feeling along the edges of the failsafe. It's connected to a dead man's switch. If my vital signs stop, or if the conditioning detects tampering, it sends an alert to Velkari intelligence. They'll know the mission is compromised. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. They'll expect periodic check-ins. When I miss one, they'll send someone to investigate. And when they find us like this, connected, with me having obviously failed to complete the mission, she didn't need to finish. They both knew she would be eliminated to protect the conspiracy. Ji-won felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. If he killed her now, broke free from the connection by force, the failsafe would trigger anyway. The conspiracy would remain hidden, and the Velkari would find another way to steal Earth's technology or start another war. If he did nothing, she died, and he probably died with her when the strike team arrived. But there was a third option forming in his mind. Dangerous and probably insane, but human enough that it might work. What if we don't try to escape the connection? He said slowly, what if we use it? Use it how? You said human minds are chaos to you, that our emotions are too loud, too intense. But that works both ways. Your conditioning is a crystalline structure, right? Precise, ordered, inflexible. She understood where he was going before he finished the thought. You want to break the conditioning using the same thing that trapped us. Your human chaos against their Velkari order. Can it work? Lyrae was quiet for a long moment, examining the idea from every angle. Theoretically, yes. Neural conditioning relies on predictable thought patterns. If we introduce enough disruption, enough emotional noise, we might be able to destabilize the crystalline structures. But Ji-won, the process would be, it would hurt both of us. I'd have to dive deeper into your consciousness than I've already gone. I'd have to experience your most intense memories, your most powerful emotions. And you'd have to actively help me, guide me through them. Would it save your life? Maybe, but it would also change me, permanently. I wouldn't be fully Velkari anymore. Your emotions, your memories, they'd become part of my baseline consciousness. I'd be contaminated. The word hung in the air between them, contaminated, as if humanity was a disease, something that infected rather than influenced. Ji-won felt anger flash through him, hot and immediate. You feel that? Lyrae said quickly. That anger? That's what I mean. Pure, instant, overwhelming. My people haven't felt that kind of emotion in millennia. We've evolved past it, or so we claim. But maybe? She paused, and through the connection, he felt her realization forming. Maybe we've evolved past too much. Maybe that's why we need to manufacture hate and grief in our operatives. Because we've forgotten how to feel anything that's strongly on our own. Ji-won thought about his sister. Lyrae had felt everything intensely, loved fiercely, mourned deeply. She burned bright and died young, and the galaxy was darker for her absence. But she had lived, really lived, in a way that maybe the Valkyrie, with their thousands of years of civilization, had forgotten how to do. "If I help you break the conditioning," he said, "and you survive this, what then? The conspiracy is still there. The High Command is still planning whatever they're planning." "Then we expose them," Lyrae said. There was something new in her voice now, something that sounded almost human. Determination mixed with rage, grief mixed with hope. "We use what we've learned, what we've become, and we burn their lies to the ground. They'll call you a traitor. They already made me one. They just didn't realize I'd be betraying them instead of you." Ji-Won looked at her and made his decision. It wasn't the safe choice or the smart choice. It was the human choice, the one that said some bridges were worth building, even if you had to walk through fire to reach the other side. "Tell me what to do," he said. Lyrae closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Open yourself completely. No defenses, no barriers. I need access to everything, your entire life, every memory that made you who you are. The happy ones and the painful ones, especially the painful ones. Strong emotions create strong neural patterns, and we need strength to break conditioning this deep. Will you see everything?" "All of it?" "Everything," she confirmed. "Your secrets, your shamas, your fears. Nothing will be hidden from me." It was violating in a way that made the original attack seem gentle. But Ji-Won thought about all the people who would die if they failed, about the war that would come if the conspiracy succeeded. He thought about Myrae, who had believed peace was possible even when everyone said she was naive. "Do it," he said, and he let his defenses fall completely. The pain was immediate and absolute. Lyrae's consciousness poured into Ji-Won's mind like liquid fire, and he poured himself back into hers with equal force. There was no gentleness now, no careful exploration. This was collision, fusion, two minds becoming temporarily one. Lyrae experienced Ji-Won's childhood in bursts of sensation and emotion. The taste of his grandmother's kimchi stew, the sound of his father singing while cooking breakfast, the feeling of safety when Myrae held his hand during thunderstorms, but also the darkness. His father's death from cancer when Ji-Won was 12. The helpless rage of watching someone you love waste away despite all of medical science's promises. The guilt of feeling relieved when it was finally over. Ji-Won felt her recoil from the intensity, but he pulled her deeper. "You need to feel it all," he said through their shared consciousness. "The good doesn't mean anything without the bad." He showed her Myrae, brilliant, passionate Myrae who believed humans and aliens could be friends, who enlisted in the diplomatic corps instead of the military because she wanted to build instead of destroy. He showed Lyrae the day they got the news. A transport accident during a supply run to a contested colony. 17 dead, including his sister. No body to bury, just vacuum and debris. The grief hit Lyrae like a physical blow. Not the manufactured grief the High Command had given her, but real human mourning. Raw, messy, endless. It didn't make sense, didn't follow logical patterns. Some days Ji-Won could barely breathe from the weight of it. Other days he could smile at her memory. The emotion didn't resolve or conclude. It just existed, permanent and changing at the same time. "How do you function?" Lyrae gasped. "How do you carry this and still work, still live?" "Because that's what humans do," Ji-Won replied. "We carry our dead with us. They make us heavy, but they also make us stronger." He showed her the moment he decided to join psionic countermeasures. Not for revenge, though part of him wanted it, but because Myrae had believed in something, and someone needed to keep believing even after she was gone. He showed her his training, the brutal mental conditioning designed to make human minds resistant to telepathy. They had broken him down and built him back up, turned his natural chaos into a weapon dot, and through it all, he had never stopped hoping that peace was possible. Never stopped believing that maybe, just maybe, species that seemed incompatible could find common ground. "You're insane," Lyrae whispered, but there was wonder in her voice. "Your whole species is insane. You hope for things that logic says are impossible. Hope isn't logical," G1 agreed. "That's why it works." They turned their attention to the conditioning now, examining it together with the full force of their combined consciousness. The crystalline structures were intricate, beautiful in their precision. Each pathway engineered to produce exact responses, to channel emotion in predetermined directions, to ensure loyalty even unto death. "We start at the foundations," Lyrae said. She had stopped trying to maintain her Valkyrie distance, stopped pretending she wasn't affected by the human emotions flooding through her. "The base structure connects to my deepest sense of identity. If we destabilize that, everything else becomes vulnerable. Will it destroy who you are? Parts of me, yes. But maybe those parts need to die. Maybe that's the point." They approached the first pathway together, and G1 channeled everything he felt about betrayal. Not just Lyrae's betrayal, but every small hurt, every broken promise, every moment of trust shattered. He amplified the emotions until they were almost unbearable, then directed them at the crystalline structure dot. It cracked, not broke. Not yet, but hairline fractures appeared in the perfect geometry. The conditioning tried to repair itself, pulling energy from other pathways to reinforce the damaged section. But that created new vulnerabilities. Lyrae attacked those, using her intimate knowledge of her own neurology, combined with G1's emotional chaos. She showed him where to strike with anger, where to apply grief, where to flood with hope and joy and fear and love. Human emotions became tools, weapons, keys to unlock the prison her own people had built in her mind. The pain was extraordinary. Every time they cracked another structure, Lyrae felt it like breaking bones. And G1 felt her pain through the connection, which amplified his emotions, which fed back into the attack in a loop that escalated beyond anything they had anticipated. But it was working. The conditioning began to collapse, not all at once, but in cascading failures. Each structure that broke weakened the others, and soon they were shattering entire sections of the neural architecture that had been constraining her thoughts for months. With the conditioning fell other things. Memories bubbled up from where they had been suppressed. Real memories, unedited, showing Lyrae who she had been before the High Command reshaped her. She had been softer once, more curious, more open. They had taken that from her and called it making her stronger. But the worst memory was the one they found at the very core of the conditioning. The truth about Theron's death. She had been there. She had watched him die from the genetic illness, had held his hand as his organs failed one by one. The grief had been pure and profound and hers. And then the recruiters had come. They had offered her purpose, meaning, a way to channel her pain into something that mattered. She had said yes, because what else was there? And they had taken her yes and twisted it into something monstrous. "They stole your morning," G1 said softly. "Made it about them instead of him." Lyrae's rage was incandescent. It burned through the remaining conditioning like acid, destroying the last of the pathways that had controlled her for so long. And when it was finally done, when the last crystalline structure shattered and dissolved, she felt herself change at a fundamental level. She was still Valkyrie, still elegant, still logical, still capable of the precise thought her species valued. But now there was something else underneath, something wild and human and unpredictable. Emotions that didn't wait for permission, thoughts that didn't follow predetermined paths. She was contaminated, just like she had feared. And it was glorious. The failsafe activated as soon as the conditioning broke. They felt it trigger, felt the neural cascade begin to build. But something was different now. The failsafe was designed for a Valkyrie mind, a predictable mind, a mind that would panic and accelerate its own destruction. Not it encountered Jiwan's consciousness instead, still entangled with Lyray's, and found chaos where it expected order. Human survival instinct didn't accept death gracefully. It fought, clawed, refused to cooperate with its own ending. And that refusal, that irrational human stubbornness, gave them the seconds they needed. Together, they rerouted the cascade. Instead of destroying her mind, they channeled it outward. The energy that should have killed her discharged through the telepathic link, through their shared consciousness, and out into the room as a pulse of pure force that shorted out every electronic device in a 10-meter radius. The lights went out. Emergency systems flickered on. And somewhere in Valkyrie Intelligence Headquarters, an alert notification was sent. Operative Lyray, mission compromised, status unknown. They had minutes before the strike team arrived. Maybe Les.G1 and Lyray separated for the first time in hours, their minds finally pulling apart. The connection faded, but didn't disappear entirely. They could still feel echoes of each other, permanent impressions left by the fusion of their consciousness. "We survived," Lyray said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion and wonder. "Now we have to tell everyone what we learned," G1 replied, "before they kill us to keep their secrets." Lyray stood on shaking legs and looked at him with eyes that held something new. Something that was neither fully Valkyrie nor fully human, but perhaps something better. "Then let's give them a secret worth dying for," she said. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows across Lyray's quarters. G1 checked his communicator, but the electromagnetic pulse from the failsafe discharge had fried it completely. They were cut off, isolated, and running out of time. He could hear footsteps in the corridor outside, boots on metal, the precise rhythm of military movement. "They're here," Lyray said. She stood by the door, her posture different from before. Still graceful, still Valkyrie, but with a new tension that spoke of human fight or flight instinct. 4 operatives, heavily armed. Standard extraction protocol for compromised agents. Can you still sense them? Through their minds? Yes, but it's harder now. The conditioning that enhanced my telepathy is gone. What I have left is ... roar, less precise. She paused, concentrating. They have orders to eliminate both of us. No questions, no capture. The High Command wants this buried. Ji-Wan moved to the window, looked out at the station beyond. Ships coming and going, people living their lives, completely unaware that 2 species were on the edge of a war built on lies. "We need proof. Your testimony alone won't be enough. They'll call you compromised, claim I manipulated you." "The neural implant," Lyray said suddenly. "You mentioned it before, during the initial attack. Psionic countermeasure officers record their mental state during operations. Do you still have the data?" Ji-Wan touched the base of his skull, where the implant was embedded. "If the EMP didn't destroy it, yes. But it's encrypted. Only accessible by psionic command, or by someone with intimate knowledge of your neural patterns." Lyray crossed the room to him. "Let me try. I know your mind now better than any scanner ever could." She placed her fingers against his skull, and he felt the familiar sensation of her consciousness touching his. But it was different now. Before, she had been an invader. Now she was a guest, welcome but still foreign. Her presence in his mind, a reminder of everything they had been through, the implant activated under her touch. Data began streaming through their shared awareness, raw recordings of everything Ji-Wan had experienced since entering her quarters. The hug, the betrayal, the mental battle, the discovery of the conspiracy, all of it preserved in perfect neural detail. This is everything we need, Leray said. Not just what I did, but what we found. The conditioning, the manufactured memories, the High Command's plan. It's all here. They'll say it's fabricated. Neural data can be faked. Not when it's corroborated by a Velkari witness with security clearance. She pulled away from him, determination hardening her features. I'll testify. Give them every detail, including what they did to me. The door shuddered as something heavy hit it from outside. Not a polite knock. A breaching charge. Get away from the door, Jiwan shouted, pulling Leray back. They had seconds before the operatives came through, and no weapons, no backup, no way to fight 4 trained killers. But they had something else. They had the truth, and sometimes that was the most dangerous weapon of all. The door exploded inward. 4 Velkari operatives entered in perfect formation, weapons raised. They wore the black armor of deep intelligence units, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. Professional, efficient, already dead inside in all the ways that mattered. On the ground, the lead operative commanded, "Both of you, now." Jiwan raised his hands slowly. "We have evidence of High Command conspiracy. We need to speak with the Galactic Council." "You're compromised," the operative replied. His weapon didn't waver. "Orders are to eliminate and sanitize." "Wait," Leray said, stepping forward. She was shaking, but her voice was steady. "I know you. Syleth, we trained together. You were there when I volunteered for deep intelligence." The lead operative hesitated. "Leray? They did it to you too, didn't they? Changed your memories, installed conditioning, turned you into a weapon. When did you volunteer, Syleth? What pain were they exploiting?" "I don't know what you're talking about." But there was uncertainty in his voice now. Jiwan could hear it, and so could the other operatives. "Look at me," Leray insisted. "Really look. You have telepathy. Use it. See what they did to me, what I discovered, what this human helped me understand." "Step back," Syleth warned, but he didn't fire. That hesitation was all Leray needed. She opened her mind deliberately, broadcasting what she had learned with all the strength she had left. It was risky. If any of the operatives decided to kill her for it, she would die before finishing. But she was counting on something the High Command hadn't anticipated. She was counting on the human parts of herself that didn't give up. Even when logic said the situation was hopeless, the images and emotions flooded out of her. Not just her own conditioning and false memories, but Jiwan's memories of humanity, his perspective on grief and hope and stubborn survival. She showed them what it meant to feel without permission, to question without fear, to choose differently than you were programmed to choose. 3 of the operatives recoiled, raising mental shields, trained responses to protect against telepathic attack. But Syleth lowered his weapon slowly. He stood frozen, his visor reflecting the emergency lights, and Jiwan knew he was seeing everything, experiencing it, understanding it. "They took Yenna," Syleth whispered. "My daughter. I lost her in an accident. But the way I remember it, the details don't." "They edited you," Leray confirmed gently. "Just like they edited me. Used your grief to make you loyal, focused, useful." Syleth removed his helmet with shaking hands. His face was younger than Jiwan expected, but his eyes were ancient with pain. "How many of us? How many operatives are built on manufactured trauma?" "I don't know," Leray admitted. "But we can find out, if you help us." The other 3 operatives were conferring quietly. Weapons still raised, but no longer pointed directly at Jiwan and Leray. They were waiting for Syleth's decision. And Jiwan realized this moment would determine everything. If Syleth chose orders over truth, they died here. If he chose to question, to doubt, to hope for something different, "I need proof," Syleth said finally. More than telepathic impressions. Something concrete that the Council can't dismiss. Jiwan stepped forward carefully, hands still raised. We have neural recordings. Everything from the initial contact to the discovery of the conspiracy. But I need to transmit them to my people before your high command can destroy the evidence. Behind Syleth, one of the other operatives spoke up. If we let you transmit, we're traitors. They'll condition us or kill us. They already killed the people we used to be, Lyrae said quietly. What's left are just weapons with our faces. Maybe it's time to be people again. Silence filled the room. Outside, the station continued its normal operations. Ships docked and departed. Delegates negotiated treaties. Life went on, unaware that 4 Velkari operatives and 1 human officer were deciding the fate of billions. Syleth holstered his weapon. Transmit your data. We'll buy you time. You're sure? Jiwan asked. No, Syleth admitted. But certainty is what they gave us with the conditioning. Maybe doubt is the first step toward being free. The next hours were chaos. Jiwan managed to access a secure communication terminal with Syleth's help. The neural recording data was transmitted directly to Ambassador Hyunwoo and to Psionic Command headquarters on Earth. Within minutes, alarms were sounding throughout the station as Velkari intelligence realized their conspiracy was being exposed. But Syleth and his team held the corridor outside Lyrae's quarters, refusing to let anyone through until the transmission was complete. Other operatives arrived, confused by the orders to stand down from their own people. Some fought, some questioned, some chose to see what Lyrae was broadcasting, opened their minds to the truth, and joined the growing group of operatives who were waking up to what had been done to them. By the time Ambassador Hyunwoo arrived with a full security team and representatives from the Galactic Council, the situation had become something unprecedented. 37 Velkari deep intelligence operatives had defected, not to humanity, but to truth itself. They stood together in the station's central plaza, broadcasting their conditioned memories and their newly recovered real ones for anyone with telepathic sensitivity to experience. The Velkari delegation tried to shut it down, called it a human trick, a manipulation. But too many people had seen, had felt the evidence directly. And when the neural recording from Jiwan's implant was presented to the Council, showing everything from an objective, documented perspective, the lies became impossible to maintain. The Velkari High Command was dissolved within a week. New leadership emerged, reformists who had been quietly horrified by their government's actions, but too afraid to speak up until now. The treaty was renegotiated with actual transparency, with both species acknowledging the wrongs committed and the work needed to move forward. And through it all, Jiwan and Lyrae stood together, not as human and Velkari, but as something new. They carried echoes of each other in their minds, permanent reminders that connection was possible even between species that seemed incompatible. 3 months later, Jiwan found himself back on the observation deck where it had all started. Lyrae stood beside him, watching the stars in companionable silence. She was different now, openly expressing emotions that would have been unthinkable for a Velkari before. She laughed at jokes, cried at sad stories, got angry when things were unfair. The other Velkari found it disturbing. Humans found it familiar. Do you regret it? Jiwan asked. Becoming whatever you are now? Lyrae considered the question seriously. I lost something of myself. The elegant precision, the collective harmony. But I gained something too. The ability to choose, to feel, to change. She looked at him with eyes that held both Velkari wisdom and human warmth. Your people have a word for it. Freedom. It's messy and frightening and wonderful. Very human, Jiwan agreed. Yes, Lyrae said, and smiled. Very human indeed. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, cautiously, but changing nonetheless. And it started with a hug that was supposed to be a trap, but became instead a bridge between worlds. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't technology, or telepathy, or superior force. Sometimes it was simply the willingness to be vulnerable, to trust, to hope for something better, even when logic said it was impossible. That, more than anything, was humanity's gift to the stars. Not perfection, not power, but the stubborn, irrational, beautiful belief that tomorrow could be different from today. And in a galaxy that had become stagnant with age and certainty, that chaos was exactly what everyone needed.